Stereotype threat in STEM, the challenge that African American women face and how to combat it. Stereotypes in the workplace affect people's abilities to perform and may prevent women, people of color, and the GLBTQ community from even entering a field. This is a predominant theme in STEM since the field is generally made up of white males. There tend to be few African American women in STEM, and it is not uncommon for these women to be met with a hostile environment that subjects them into following the stereotype expected of them. This can hinder their ability to make progress in their careers. They may feel like they do not belong or they are not doing enough good work compared to their overrepresented white male counterparts. Underrepresented people usually feel like they have to work harder than others for the same result, and society has told us that, unfortunately, it is true. Even before an African American woman enters the STEM field, she is already placed into a box that is hard to get out of, and when she tries to get out of the so-called box, she may be ridiculed for it because it is not how she is supposed to act. Many early scientists consisted of men, and men often took credit for a woman's work when it came to big discoveries. For example, scientists James D. Watson and Francis H. C. Crick are known for discovering the shape of DNA to be a double helix when it was really Rosalind Franklin who had discovered it. Over the years, society has trained women to be homemakers, and it wasn't really until the women's liberation movement that they started demanding more equal things and going into fields that they weren't in before, such as STEM and medicine. The experiences of the past lead us to today and have since shaped the way we think, creating bias for or against certain groups of people. One of these groups is African American women. Although the stereotype threat is a serious concern for women and minorities who wish to enter STEM, this threat is magnified for women of African American descent. In her TED Talk, Kimberly Crenshaw spoke about how she learned that, quote, African American women, like other women of color, like other socially marginalized people all over the world, were facing all kinds of dilemmas and challenges as consequences of intersectionality. Many researchers have documented the, quote, inferior education, lack of in-school and community resources, obsolete curricula and teaching methods, dilapidated facilities, and inexperienced teachers that are commonplace in predominantly low-income Black communities. Unfortunately, this lack of educational resources has led to African American people being associated with terms such as poverty, ignorance, and inferior. This racial threat, combined with untrue but widespread stereotype that women are not good at math, creates a much taller wall that Black women must surmount to gain entrance into STEM. Despite the fact that these stereotypes certainly are not true, quote, stereotypes become internalized. Through stereotype threat, we see how these stereotypes impact our performance in certain areas. This in turn reinforces our belief that the stereotype is in any way real. Clearly, when considering ways to address the stereotype threat in STEM, one must also consider the effects of intersectionality of race and gender. One way to combat the stereotype threat and increase the engagement of women and minorities in STEM is through robotics. One of the many benefits of robotics education is that, quote, students can take initiative roles as co-constructors of learning, not as passive knowledge receivers nor technology consumers. By exposing students to STEM and giving them opportunity to actively engage in math and science, it is more likely that they will choose to study a science or technology-related field when they head off to college. Although many schools do have robotic programs or clubs, the ones that do tend to have disproportionate numbers of male students. Because these teams are made up of mostly or entirely boys, girls who might otherwise be interested in joining are deterred from doing so. A girl who does join the team may face discrimination from her teammates who underestimate her intellectual capabilities based on her sex or ethnicity. In a study about the academic consequences of stereotype threat, the author note that, quote, mere presence of posters or magazines in a STEM classroom or laboratory setting that are male typical can undermine women's interest in performance. Thus, a male-dominated environment poses an implicit stereotype threat for women. One college student wrote of her experience where, quote, two girls in a group had been working on the robot. We were building in that class for hours. And the guys in their group came back in and within minutes had sentenced them all to do menial tasks, while the guys went and had all the fun in the machine shop. By creating an all-girls team, this problem can be averted. Not facing the threat of being different or underappreciated, these girls will be more likely to get involved in robotics and feel more confident in asking questions and making decisions. Another problem that arises is the lack of funding for public schools in lower socioeconomic areas. These areas, which tend to have disproportionate numbers of African American children, may not have the same opportunity to participate in robotics clubs that students in wealthier areas may experience. In order to ensure that students from all backgrounds have access to these opportunities, one idea is to start the robotics program at a public school in a wealthy area, but assign a partner school in a less wealthy area. Transportation could be provided between the two schools, allowing students who might otherwise be unable to participate in the activity the opportunity to be in a robotics club. Because these students may feel uncomfortable traveling to another school, the club could alternate weeks meeting at each of the schools. The students would have the opportunity to attend each week, but also wouldn't feel like they are intruding on another school's program. In these robotics clubs, it is vital to keep the students engaged. Research has shown that, quote, although they initially take the same STEM-focused classes as their male counterparts when they are young, their interest and self-confidence tends to drop when they are in middle school. In order to keep the interest of the students, it is essential to allow them to use creativity in their designs. If the girls wish to make their robot a certain color or design, they should be allowed to do so. Pressuring them to make their robots look traditional and boyish further perpetuates the stereotype that you have to be a man or at least very masculine to do well and fit in STEM. By implementing these solutions, more girls of all ethnicities will be exposed to STEM and they will be more likely to engage with science and technology and perhaps pursue these fields when they transition to higher forms of education. Mitigating stereotype threat goes beyond simply acknowledging the problem. Intervention is necessary to challenge centuries' worth of male-dominated paradigms. The implementation of all-girls robotics team provides a hands-on experience for young girls and encourages them to actively pursue STEM-related fields. Additionally, the intersectionality of socioeconomic status and ethnicity is a necessary component to address the stereotype threat in STEM. Underrepresented groups offer vital insight that would otherwise go unacknowledged in a white, male-dominated environment. Thus, the ideal candidate for STEM must be redefined through hands-on measures in order to cultivate innovative technologies that help people on a global scale.